podcast, we cover sensitive subjects such as abuse, suicide, self-harm, depression, and other difficult topics. We are not medical professionals. We suffer from our own mental health issues. Our opinions should not be taken as medical advice. Dread the Stigma is for educational purposes and awareness for mental health only.
Here we go. Welcome to episode 5 of Dread the Stigma. That's right. 5 digits. How are you, Lydia?
I'm here.
You're here. I know. That's about what I can say. I'm
Yeah.
here, but it's going to be a great show. We're going to talk about we've been covering all kinds of different ways and occupations and whatnot before we get into any disorders and talk more in depth about them. And tonight's going to be no different. We're going to be talking about relationships, namely couples, married or not,
because we have a couple.
We do,
but relationships are not just limited to intimate couples. It's also your friends, the people you work with, all those different types of relationships.
Absolutely.
But because we do have a guest that is a couple, obviously we'll be focusing more on that. But for anybody,
I want I also wanted to say, be sure if you are watching over on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, please subscribe. I've been adding little playlists here lately. I got one, specifically all on borderline personality disorder. I just started with that because that's what I deal with. And I'm also going to start doing some little almost testimonials where, and I just brought, this is the first time you're hearing this, Lydia, because I've been thinking about this, to add more content on the YouTube channel versus just, the podcasts, which are awesome, but, some more educational videos. And I thought about, wouldn't it be nice to, get somebody, just everyday people like our guest tonight, and just take and have them tell their story and, bring a little message of hope that if you are suffering from any particular disorder or multiple ones, there is, and I hate to sound cliche, but there is, light at the end of the tunnel. It is hard getting there, but it is there. So I thought that would be kind of cool to sit down and talk with, somebody about their story and hopefully, as I said, bring a little hope to those suffering. So we're going to be having that up soon. So you're going to want to subscribe to get new content. I guess without further ado, we have Reed and Maria on with us. How you guys doing?
welcome.
Choice, pretty good.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining us. We all know that it's no real secret that mental health and mental illness does affect relationships in all aspects, whether it be, as Lydia mentioned, a coworker, a friend, a family member, or as we're going to talk tonight, a husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, those kind of relationships. Let's start with you, Reed. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, yourself? We've talked before the show. So and you've even made a post on the Facebook page about some of the things you were diagnosed with. So why don't we start with yourself, and you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Knuck and Futz. So
it's one of those things where I've received a lot of diagnoses over the period of my life. It starts when you're young, it's like your ADHD. Then you get into your teens and they're like, oh, you're bipolar. And then you get into your 20s and you're like, you have a personality disorder. And then you get into your 40s and they're like, oh, and by the way, you're autistic. So what is it? Am I autistic and have a personality disorder, or am I autistic and I have bipolar? Am I ADHD and I have a autism? Like, what the f is wrong with me?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, you've got all of these symptoms and some of them overlap. There's a lot about ADHD that overlaps with autism. There's a lot about personality disorders that overlap with autism.
I
So
find with like a lot of, just in doing research, like a lot of these mental illnesses overlap.
yeah,
Like if you have anxiety, you most likely are suffering from depression as well, and so forth. And obviously if you're bipolar, you have your highs and your lows, so you have you're suffering from depression. And so it's just like you said, it's like, well, what is it? Did this cause this, or am I having personality disorder because I am autistic, or
Right.
or is it literally all of them and I'm just fucked, like
Yeah. I've had
throw another shrimp on the bobby.
I mean, right. And the same thing with borderline, with the overlapping, that and ADHD, have some overlapping things. So it makes it sometimes puts you in a position that like you're a lab rat. And they have no idea because it's not an exact science. So, we see a lot of misdiagnoses. And so have you gotten an actual diagnosis, or you're just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here?
I think every diagnosis I've ever received has informed me about my problems. So at least puts them in perspective.
Gotcha.
It doesn't matter necessarily that one of them is incorrect, because understanding those parts of that symptom might having to do with those sorts of things like ADHD or autism or personality disorder or autism
or
bipolar disorder or personality disorder. Okay, probably one or two of those things is wrong, but I still understand the symptoms, because they overlap somewhere. So that means, there's a way of dealing with that from one perspective or the other, so I can approach both. And because I've learned about myself that way, I have gotten an awful lot better at managing it. And I mean, the chemicals bear the load, but like, I had to have very serious conversations with my wife about my behaviors, how I can change and how I can make them better based on the symptoms.
But I think what helps is that you take accountability for your actions.
Well, that's a whole other monster,
And we'll probably get to that.
Yeah.
So how did you two meet?
How did we meet?
I sell swords.
And I collect swords. And he was on a mutual friend's site. And I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, that's so awesome. Because he has
Met
this
on
huge
Facebook
pegboard of doom of swords. And I'm like, I want to go check this guy out. I'm like, he just might be perfect. He's normally not my type of guy. And
yeah, when she met me, I had super long hair and I was skinny as a rail. So
you were like Otis.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. And it was like I remember like walking into the cafe and his jaw like hit the floor. I'm like, what is going on here? Because it wasn't a date.
No, it wasn't a date.
I was just gonna buy swords from him.
So yeah, she's
it was like a meet and greet.
Potential customer. So why don't I show my potential customer around town and
watch him
maybe
eat fire.
maybe like probe other interests of my potential customer, and in incredibly romantic settings.
In a very classic 80s movie kind of level of like flirting with me.
At the end of the night, she's like, "This was a date." I'm like, "Yeah."
I'm like,
It ended up to be one.
Yeah.
But I think that's like how the best ones end up.
Yeah.
Is you don't even know that that's really what it was.
Yeah.
But isn't that just like a terrible 80s movie?
Like he has said, he was like, I just want to let you know that I am fucking crazy. I'm like,
one of the
you
first
kind of like
things
hear
I
that
said
from like
to her.
other people. It's like, oh, I'm crazy. It's just like you don't really take him seriously. But I was like, holy shit, you were like living with me for about like a full almost like 6 months before I realized. I'm like, oh
No, he's
oh shoot,
crazy.
So you
So it's-
actually, in the beginning of your relationship, you were aware of the diagnoses.
Yeah, he was living in my house at the time. He just kind of like just moved in like a couple months, and he had his first like episode.
major episode. Yeah, I think that was probably because of college or something.
Yeah, I think it was college.
Like a final or some shit like that. When like I just shot my bolt completely.
Yeah, and like it's like my walls were like punched in. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh yeah, it's bad. It's super bad.
So when you started seeing like these things and realizing, the issues that he was suffering, did that make you second guess the relationship at all?
It did, but I kept reminding myself that he's not a bad person. He's not malicious. He's not like get me. He's just it's something going on internally within himself. But I wasn't taking it personally, and I'm like I just kept realizing that. And
I think that's the biggest thing too. Like people hear that, oh, you have a mental illness, so like you're dangerous, or I can't be around you, and and I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions, because 9 times out of 10 it's not.
Yeah.
And you guys have been together how long now?
13 years.
Yeah, I think this is the 13th year.
Lucky
so
13.
something has obviously worked. Maria, your dedication and understanding, hey, this isn't just who he is. There's something going on inside, and you were able to see that he's a good guy, but something is really causing outbursts, punching holes in walls, and having these episodes. And I've been down that road. It's almost like you're speaking my story because, and I think a lot of that has to do with, as you mentioned, looking up, the symptoms and understanding them. And that brings me to my next question is, was there a lot, once you found out what he was diagnosed with, did you go and like research and look at it so you would have a better understanding? Because I think that's key as well.
Yeah, I did.
I did
went
better
through,
than me.
Yeah, I went through like pretty much like everything online. I actually have access to the DSM, which is the diagnostic material for mental illness. I like went through that and read through that because I have like medical background. Even asked my dad, who's a neurologist, kind of like give me this like more insight. Like I went completely like.
And she has full access to all of my HIPAA information, so like she could literally just go through my records.
Yeah. So,
and do you feel like because she has so much information, like that helps your relationship?
I think so, yeah. Like I mean, at least knowing what you're dealing with, like what monster you're looking at.
Yeah, I think understanding, the other person's issues. I mean, we see it with, which is part of the stigma. We see it with, a cancer, victim, somebody who's suffering that you can see the withering away. And, the people, your wife, your husband, there's going to be compassion there because they know that if this ain't taken care of, you may pass away. But it's also the same with mental illness. You just don't see it on the surface.
Well, what did someone say? Like, suicide is the death caused by depression. You know, like you have to look at it like a cancer. You know, they're not killing themselves. The depression is literally killing them.
Yeah. It's
well,
the only way to end the pain that you're feeling.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so it's
because as much as we want to say like all these meds work, like,
yeah,
I'm sure I can't speak for you as far as medications. I know like my nightstand looks like a pharmacy.
yeah,
you know,
so like I'm on like 3 drugs. So like 3? Yeah, 3. Yeah. I think it was no, it's just 3.
Savvy.
Yeah. So I'm on 3 different medications just to keep me normal. And they do help. They do a lot of the work, you know. But that's actually the thing that I brought up earlier at the beginning of the show. It's like I have to take that level of responsibility for myself. You know what I mean? Like any relationship that's worth it is one worth working for. And I think that's very important. Like she wouldn't put in the work getting to understand me if it didn't matter to her, and I wouldn't put in the work, you know, to make sure I live up to that. You know,
thanks, babe.
So it's like it you know, it's got to be something that really matters to you, I think, for a lot of people. And I got better, man. You know, like I took
important.
Yeah, I took the medication. I went to therapies. I started to meditate. I wanted to be a better person for my wife.
In researching, like, you know, mental health and relationships, one of the things that kept coming up was a sort of resentment from the partner who was not suffering. So did you ever feel any resentment, Maria? Like, oh, I'm having to pick up this extra work. I'm having to do this and that.
Yeah.
Like it takes a toll on you.
Yeah, it really I hate to say this, babe, but I love you. But like, there's a level of his episode or like episodes that he's had that's like definitely caused some PTSD, you know, within that. But I came to like a realization that like it's not him, it is me. That's something that I have to go take accountability for.
Well, she's got a lot of her own trauma, you know, growing up.
Yeah.
So like, you know, she's not completely foreign to this.
Yeah. So it's at the beginning of our relationship, I had a little bit of resentment and contentment for like just always like being there for him. I didn't really have that outside support. And I'm like, to be honest, I'm like, he has to go deal with this every day, throughout the day and throughout the years. And it's just like, it's not fair to him to just suffer by himself. So it's not so much like me suffering or him just suffering. It's like both of us going through like mental illness together.
Yeah, we're doing it together, you know.
You know, everybody always... Oh, I'm sorry, Otis.
No,
I always step on you.
You know, you're fine.
And Otis, get out of the way.
I know. Here.
This is my show now. Just kidding. It's his show. I'm just here for support.
It's our show. Let's just make that. No, but you know, and I think that you know you almost like one person. One side of the couple may, in this case, yourself, Reed, you know, has the mental illness. You know, the other person, you know, is living with that mental illness as well. And you know that makes it, you know, really, really difficult. I mean, at times, because you know, and that's why, you know, you taking and doing the research, it made you understand more, which I think in turn made you a little bit more compassionate to what he is going through. Like you said, you know, and I know with borderline and the anxiety and the major depressive disorder that I deal with, that's in sometimes every second battle. Okay. And you know, the your spouse may only deal with that through episodes and things like that, but the other person with a smile on their face may be suffering quite a lot, and it doesn't show like it would with a physical illness.
Yeah.
One of the things that we agreed on is that if he's like not feeling like up to par, or if he's like kind of like feeling a bit off, like I have him like tell me, I'm like, or that I'll just ask him because I'm.
Yeah, because sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it, you know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So it's like,
well, yeah, it's easier for someone on the outside
Yeah.
to see these things going on with you, because you're like, it's normal for me,
yeah.
but for an outsider, it's like, maybe, this isn't.
Have you
what's
eaten
going on
recently, dear?
Are you keeping yourself hydrated?
It's terrible.
Well, because
that's another thing. Like, you feel like such a goddamn burden all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but you can't help it. It's also part of the disease. You feel
I
like,
completely understand.
yeah, it's like I'm putting some poor other person through the shit that I don't even want to deal with. You know?
Yeah. There's been plenty of times where, I won't talk, or I'll get, really, self-harming, wanting to, do bad things. And it's because I feel like a burden that, it's that was saying, you'd be better off without me, because, I know the pain that I'm going through. It may not show on the surface, but it feels like such a burden. I don't know how many times I've used that phrase.
It's one of the biggest things.
A part of that is the disease telling you that you are a burden.
Right.
Sorry, Lydia. I didn't mean to
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, like everybody always says relationships are 50-50, but they're not. I had seen a video recently, and it was saying how one day you're bringing 80% and the other person only has 20%, so as long as Maria, you're willing to pick up the extra when he's not up to par, but also, like I'm sure he does for you.
Yep.
Because
he does.
Because like you said, it takes a toll on you as well. So, as long as, and in the research, most of it was communication is the biggest part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something I'm constantly on her about, is communication, because
and you would think it was the other way around.
Yeah. Like, because I've been through lots of relationships being this fucking nuts. So I've learned how to basically communicate well to the benefit of my partner, because I care.
Do you feel like those relationships ended because of your mental illnesses, or?
Oh, at least two of them, yeah, that I can think of, like the major ones in my life, not the ones that were like weekend flings.
So it did play a part in that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was with one particular person who was basically just as crazy as me, and that was just terrible. It was just like a front to back, just absolute nightmare. And I genuinely, to this day, do not understand how I managed to drag that relationship out as long as I did. And I mean, it, because like, you just can't, you can't be constantly bouncing off of each other, Yeah. It's like, if you've ever seen a video of multiple people with Tourette's, one tick will set off the other. It's the same thing, Like, she needed her help and I needed mine, and that means we needed to do it separately.
Yeah, because I mean, I've luckily, well, at least that I know of, I've always been the one with the mental illness in all my relationships. I don't know. I mean, I kind of had my suspicions that some of my exes may have been a little off, but nothing that was diagnosed like myself. So I can't imagine being in a relationship where both are suffering from, you know, whatever, man, that takes a lot to get through.
Well, yeah, and it's like I don't want to discourage people who
No,
are, you know,
absolutely.
equally as, you know, deranged, to not try. What I'm trying to say is like both of us needed to work on it a lot.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because we both needed to work on it, we were not at a place in our lives where we were at all compatible.
Right.
Because I was so friggin' off and she was so friggin' off, and neither of us were really taking responsibility for it.
Mhm.
And it became explosive, you know, like quite violent, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's not good for either one of you.
No, it's terrible. So like, yeah, it was, you know, a part of, maybe it was a good way to recognize that I needed to work on myself more, but like, it was just, you know, the illness got in the way.
So I don't know if this is something you are both comfortable talking about, and you don't have to. It was just like one of the things I had found. And it said one of the major issues with in a, you know, an actual coupling relationship, not just friends, but one of the biggest things was like intimacy, and how that also affects your relationship, because, you know, say you're depressed, it can leave you uninterested in sex in your relationship. And also, you know, a lot of these medications, some of the side effects are a decrease in libido. So, but, you know, and then also intimacy could be triggering for those illnesses as well, you know, because some people could be suffering from like a sexual abuse. So intimacy could just be like the last thing that that person needs in their relationship, and the other person has to be accepting of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't mind talking about sex. It's
Yep.
not a big deal.
Not a problem.
So like, yeah, seriously, Zoloft, fucking I hate that stuff. So it does, like, before I started taking it, I could go probably twice a night. After I took it, I could probably go one every other day. It's just, it slowed me down an awful lot, not just in capacity, but also interest.
Mhm.
And I hate it because, like, I feel like I'm like restrained for some reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how does that affect you, Maria? Like,
Actually, so if he's just not in the mood, I would either like just like give him a massage, or like we'll just like talk and hang out. I mean, it's not like the like the sexual aspect of being intimate, but it's still of a emotional, mental intimacy that's like that I kind of crave as well.
Our dog is having a conniption. He hasn't figured out where we are yet. Our dog's blind. Yeah, but I mean, she's amazing. She's a goddamn saint, for Christ's sake. I mean, yeah, seriously, putting up with me all these years and all of my problems, and having to literally sit there and watch me grow as a person.
So one of my actually all my past relationships, I would preferably declare this, but I am a psychic witch medium. I'm a psychic medium witch. There we go. Sorry.
There you go. Get it out, man.
And all the guys and females that I've dated, they never ever let me be my true genuine self.
mm-hmm.
And Alec, he Reed's the first one who actually not only accepted it but also supported it too as well, and that kind of what made me comfortable around him, which definitely helped out when you started taking the medications and everything. That like sexual intimacy was like dying down. It's still, I had that connection with you. So I think that's what really had helped.
I honestly don't understand what the big deal is. You know, like, there are people out there who believe a guy died for 3 days or something, and now we have to metaphorically eat his body and drink his blood.
Metal.
I'm not trying to be super offensive. I'm just saying, like, to me as a person, it all sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it matter, man? Like, let people believe.
So because you two have been together so long, do you feel like there's any codependency in your relationship now?
Oh God, I
To
wish there
a
wasn't. Yeah,
extent-
yeah.
To a slight extent. I think
You're like my goddamn secretary.
pretty much. Pretty
I
much.
mean, I wonder if I could even function without you as a person anymore.
So
to be honest.
A few months ago, we had a really bad high-level carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
where
yeah, I
fully
remember.
coded for
Yeah, she
Yeah.
died for 7 minutes.
32 seconds. And hands down, if I pretty much kept on flatlining, he would not have been okay. He definitely
Mhm.
would not have been okay if I went away first.
I can't even approach the subject. Like, we're just not
Sorry.
going to talk about that.
Love you.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it's so it's like I guess I just got too used to someone helping me with my bigger maybe my smaller issues. Like, I'm severely ADHD probably. So it's like I have a hard time focusing. I have a hard time remembering stuff. I have a hard time keeping dates.
I feel you. I got Post-its everywhere.
Seriously,
Yeah.
like the effort I have to put into remembering important stuff is insane.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Maria helps me remember stuff, and I'm just like, do I even remember the tips and tricks to get by without another person constantly reminding you of things? And that's just the ADHD, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even dealt with it this past week. I didn't realize I had scheduled 2 appointments for the same morning.
Mm.
Oh.
And I was like, man, I swore the one appointment was the 28th, but it was the 18th. And I had already scheduled another appointment for the 18th. And I'm like, I thought I was like doing good. Like,
Yeah.
I had a hand-drawn calendar on my fridge and I still messed it up.
Yeah. Yo.
Luckily, one of them was my psychiatrist, so I'm, like, he's understanding because he gets he knows that's what I'm dealing with, so it's easy to reschedule with him.
I had
But
a huge issue with my psychiatrist at first.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, because all right, so her availabilities were only during business hours, which means that for a long time, I had to have my appointments on my lunch break, and I had a very chaotic, stressful job, and
Dealing with
kept missing
that
them.
type of stuff during the middle of the day and your shift, I'm sure took a toll on your work.
And it takes a toll on your work, but like on the opposite side, it's like now I'm missing tons of appointments, because like I got distracted or there was an emergency, like whatever, like preventing me from getting to lunch on time. So like that just things like that makes it incredibly stressful, like in general, let alone your relationships, You have like coworkers that depend on you, for Christ's sake, and like you're lucky if you can remember their names.
I had that just the other day. It was someone I used to work with, and we were at a retirement party, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I know that I know him, and I worked with him for many years, and I'm like, what is his name?
Yeah. Where do I know him from?
I'm like, I know you. I'm like, but and you don't want to say like, oh, what's your name? Even though we worked together for
Well,
like
you got to
5,
take him
6
to
years.
Starbucks. Listen to some barista
Right?
butcher.
So I thought this would be interesting.
Sorry.
I had found an article that said it was 10 ways that mental health can affect marriage and relationships. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of go down that list and see how
I'll try to make my answers more succinct.
Well, number one was breakdowns in communication, which we've kind of already touched upon.
Mhm.
You know, and it was saying when one party is in a relationship and suffering from poor mental health and it has a big impact on communication, and they struggle to articulate themselves or communicate their feelings, making conversation difficult and causing the relationship to suffer.
Yeah.
But it seems as though you two are pretty good at communicating with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think learning to communicate was probably the most important skill that I picked up along the way.
And he's helped me out with communicating because I've always been shut out with like saying how I feel.
Oh yeah, her entire family's emotionally closed off.
It's fun times. I don't think I've ever hugged my mom until actually tonight. It was like one of the first times ever. So.
No, I'm not like I'm not physically affectionate. Like even I was going to a concert with a couple of friends and the one friend was like new to the group or whatever. And she was like, "Oh my God, I love you." And I was like, "Thank you." And everybody started laughing. And I'm like, I'm just not that type of person to be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I love you," and give me a hug. You know, like I'm just not that. So I completely, I feel you, girl.
You want to hear something fucking hysterical? I cannot stand physical contact, and I'm a hugger. How does that even make any sense? Like I just got so used to being so uncomfortable doing it that it just became normal.
Well, I think it's the compression that makes you feel safe. And Otis, I know I'm so sorry. I always take over all the talking.
You're fine. Yeah.
I can't remember what movie it was. And it's about this autistic woman and she created like the thing for the cows to go through before they're like slaughtered to make them more comfortable.
Okay, yeah.
I'm and I hate that I can't remember
I've heard about things like hug boxes and stuff like that.
Yes. And one of her coping mechanisms was, you know, basically like hugging herself.
Yeah.
And just putting the compression on herself to calm herself down. And you know, we have like I have a weighted blanket and everything. So I don't know how much it helps, but
it really works for some people.
It does. And that's great.
Excuse me.
So number 2 was addiction in substance abuse. It says 29% of people suffering from mental disorders also struggle with addiction. Is that your cue you want to say something?
No, I'm raising my hand. I fit into that. Absolutely. I did, you know, drinking the way I was for years on top of what at a lot of those times I didn't even know when I was younger what was going on with me.
Yeah.
And I just knew that for one, drinking, you know, or doing any substance can be a temporary fix. Marsha Lanahan, who is the founder of dialectical behavioral therapy, said that drinking is, you know, unfortunately a very, you know, effective coping mechanism to balance yourself back out. The only problem is it's very temporary and it leads to other things. And with me, it led to alcoholism. So I had to, you know, put the bottle down. I got a little over a year. And once I got that out of my system and I think got put on the right medications, everything just kind of balanced out. And I'm a completely different person. So
what I say to an awful lot of people is it's like, are you an addict or are you self-medicating? Like, how do you think we got here? When I was younger, from like just fresh on the streets, because like I had no place to go, so like I ended up homeless for a period of time. You would have assumed that I was an alcoholic the way I used to drink, and at that period of time, I might as well have been. because like I was drunk every day, half of the day at least, going to work drunk, driving drunk. I drove drunk, you know, I'll own up to it. And then like when I finally got away from all of that was when I started to realize what was going on. And that was like the first time I really tried medication, because, you know, I was completely off the bloody deep end. And I knew it wasn't just because, like, you know, I was a party animal or something, that I was trying to feel better. I was trying
Yep.
to numb the pain for all
Just
parts.
that euphoric feeling, you know, like I don't have to feel
Yeah.
anything else because this is making me feel happy.
Yeah, maybe I should talk to a doctor. And that's what it was for me. You know, that was not successful. Admittedly, it took me a lot of attempts to really figure myself out. I probably tried medication at least 3 times. This last time being the one that stuck. But I always had these like incredible disasters when it came to medication. And a part of that was the ADHD forgetting to take the damn medication.
Yeah.
That, or also having the psych provider not listening to you.
And the psych providers giving you the wrong shit because they're not listening, or you not having insurance for multiple years, so now you can't get anything. It's just like at one particular point, I thought that like medication just wasn't an answer because
I did as well.
I
was completely against it for years, and I had a few really bad episodes. I was on like 5 different medications.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I was taking like 5 pills. They put me on 1,500 milligrams of lithium.
Oh
my God, you too?
I
happened to me too, man.
Yeah, I was on Trileptal. I was hallucinating. I was blacking out. I was having seizures. I told him, I was like, you know what? To hell with this. And I'll self-medicate. And that led to a lot of drinking, you know, smoking weed and things like, you know, which, you know, I still use cannabis to help me with the drinking. It does help with my anxiety. I'm not promoting any kind of drug use, but it has helped me. You know, it may not help everyone, but it helped me.
Well, it's better than cigarettes. Like like a lot of people smoke cigarettes to self-medicate.
Yeah.
And like at the very least, the weed isn't killing you.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, weed's helping with my addiction with because I'm a recovering alcoholic. And
yeah, she's also a recovering alcoholic.
So it's like it's now like 13 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
That like I'm finally been like sober, and it just weed's pretty much the only time it's like I still get the cravings, but like just taking like a small edible, I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Chill.
I tell you what, you know, before we get on to the next one, the Lexapro, which has very serious adverse effects if you drink on them, was a motivating factor too, because for once I was trying to put my mental health first before, you know, my addiction, whereas before I was always thinking about the beer to help with my addiction or my mental illness. Now it's just the opposite. And I've always told my wife, if I could deal with my mental health, I think the drinking would soon follow because I was using that to cope with the mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think number 3 and 4 kind of go hand in hand with each other. 3 is job loss and 4 is financial problems, because obviously if you lose your job, you're going to suffer financially. So it's saying that job loss is often a key driver for mental health problems. So, I mean, I don't know if they're saying that the job loss caused the mental illness or the mental illness caused the job loss. But I mean, if you've had any issues with that.
Yeah. Oh God. So probably during my teenage years, I quit every job because like I couldn't put up with the stress. I literally couldn't hold a job. I burned through every job opportunity in like my entire town. It was terrible.
Mm.
And you know, that was before, you know, getting medicated. And like I didn't have like a college degree or anything like that. So it's like, you know, you're gonna work like physical labor jobs and shit like that. But anyways, like, so I lost all of those. I finally figured out like that, like I could regulate myself enough to go to college, so I started to. Um, you know, I tried working during that period, and the college and job was too stressful, so one of them had to go, and I really wanted to finish college, so I kept going to college. So, but after college, it's like, okay, get a job. So you get a job, and I lost. I resigned from like all of those, and I gave up. I was just like, man, like I'm gonna end up on disability, so I applied for disability,
I
and
got denied for that.
that was a 2-year process.
2.5
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it takes a while.
and I got denied the whole appeals process from beginning to end. And
He actually had an episode mid-trial, and they kept telling him, "You need to calm down, sir."
yeah, I freaked out, man. I was fucking, you know,
He was like bawling, he was crying.
because I had to talk to a judge about everything that's wrong with me, so I started crying, and it's like,
No,
you
it's
need to calm down,
hard
sir. Yeah. So they
to,
denied us. So, you know, not getting disability, that means I have to get a job, you know, and I was like, I need to be able to find a job that I'm not going to quit.
Let alone you have to have that like common respect towards you, though.
Yeah, like, and also where I'm not treated like a total bitch.
Have you had any issues with coworkers, you know, finding out about your mental illnesses and treating you different?
So, oh yeah, you know, I used to keep it to myself, but I think people sort of figured it out. Because I was fucking unhinged back in the days. But you know, when I learned slowly as I learned to communicate, I started to be more open about it, because that was really what I was trying to do, is be vocal. It's like, hey, we are among you. And
Yep,
you know,
1 in 5.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that started to make people seriously uncomfortable at first. I got better at basically talking about it. But I did have to just get used to people being uncomfortable around me.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's not something that's ever going to go away. Like, some people just are not going to be comfortable around you, regardless of how much you educate them or try to comfort them about it.
Yeah, and I've had
That's why we need to break the stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had some coworkers that had met me. They was like, "How do you feel like comfortable with like, you know, when he gets kind of really too crazy?" And I'm like, one, that's none of your business, and two, I married him because he's overall a very decent, wonderful man to me and to everybody else. Is so when you actually start getting rude and disrespectful, either one of us is going to say something.
So the men, you know,
yeah.
Do you
I
really
think
want
people-
a 4'11" Asian midget like
Biting your
screaming her head
ankles.
off?
I think it's, you know, people need to realize that the mental illness does not define the person. Yeah, I may be suffering from this, but I'm still me. You
Well,
know?
I think a lot of it has to do with the portrayal of people with mental illness.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because what's the percentage of people with mental illness who are actually dangerous? Is it like
Very little.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
like everybody associates mental illness with
With that small
legitimately
percent.
dangerous people.
Because that's what you see in the media.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say we
we
did a whole episode about that, about in the movies and how it's portrayed and how it, you know, pushes that stigma out there that people with mental illness are violent. They're you know, they're just, crazy. And sure, there is a small part, percentage of people who suffer from really serious mental illnesses. Not that, one is any less than the other, in my opinion, but do go unhinged, and some of them, end up killing their family. One of my favorite shows is Signs of a Psychopath on ID. I love that show because it really dives into it. So yeah, there are, but that also could be one of those shows that if you're not smart enough to understand, that could be pushing the stigma as well, because it tells people, oh, this person has, I've seen numerous people, oh, this person has borderline personality disorder and he took out his whole family. Wait a minute, I have borderline personality disorder. Are people that know me with that disorder going to think that I'm going to take out my whole family? So now I'm very open about talking about it. I'll talk about it and be like, yeah, I've been sober since I checked myself into, the psych ward over a year ago. I don't care what they think. I've just become comfortable with who I am and what I have to deal with, basically, and to help
get comfortable with making people uncomfortable.
There you go. Couldn't have said any better.
It's the only way they're going to learn.
Yeah.
Sure. So number 5, we've already kind of touched on it. Is resentment. Like, oh, I'm having to pick up extra housework. I'm having to do all these extra things because my partner is struggling. And I think it does take a toll on the partner who's having to pick up those extra things. And it's I think you had said that you tell him about the resentment sometimes.
Yeah. And I tell him, I was like, if it's getting too much, or like I'm getting that caregiver burnout, I'm like, babe, I love you. I'm always here for you, but I just need some time to me.
We had to have that conversation. Like when we first started to really deal with it, together, she didn't give herself breaks. She
which leads into number 6, which is fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be just emotionally draining, physically draining.
Yeah. And I told her, I was just like, look, that's really not healthy. You need to be able to tell me that you need a break, and then you need to be able to just take that break. Yeah. Because like sometimes you just can't give anymore. You don't have it in you.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
As they say.
Yeah.
7 is a breakdown of friendships and family relationships.
I've never really had that kind of a problem. I mean, in my family, I'm definitely known as the black sheep for sure. But
they're still absolutely supportive, though.
Yeah, they're pretty cool about it, honestly.
Really
supportive. I'm closest to my Italian family, and they're pretty big on family in general. Oh, excuse me. What was the other one besides family?
Friendships.
I think actually the friendships I've lost were when I started to get better, not from being worse, because some of the people that I met along the way earlier on in my life were sort of there for the symptoms. They wanted to have someone to drink with because they had a problem too.
Exactly.
Yeah, like or they wanted someone that would get their back in a crazy situation because they knew that they would do something crazy at some point.
Because the crazy people are going to be overly crazy. As I started to work on myself, there were you just lost people who weren't willing to work on themselves.
Yeah.
There's actually it's a newer song, and it's become like one of my favorites because I feel like I've lost a lot of friendships over the last few years. And the song is called Heavy. And it's by Sky Daddy and Citizen Soldier. And they talk about like what you said, like, you know, when you're not the fun person to hang out with anymore. You're not going out drinking, you're not going out and doing these things. And eventually it just gets to the point where you're no longer invited. You know, they're not, you know, it just becomes, they feel like you're a burden on them because of your mental illness.
Yeah, and that's absolutely happened. You know, like I said, I used to basically drink myself into a stupor every night. And there were people who wanted to do that with me, and that's all they wanted to do. And when I realized that that was a problem, they didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
number 8, I don't know. Do you have children?
No.
What did you want to say about the last thing?
I'm sorry.
Culturally, for Philippines, that's where my family or my mom and dad are from. When I had to go have the conversation with him that like he has a mental illness, plural, it's like it registered. Like my dad was kind of like, oh, okay. He was like, let me know if you guys need anything, whatnot. My mom, on the other hand, she was not acceptable about it. She was like, is he hurting you? It's just like, crazy people are like meant to be like ultra violence. I'm like, no, not at all, Mom. We can do a full body scan on me. I'm not hurt at all. I'm like actually really well, doing really great. So culturally, it's mental illness really necessarily wasn't discussed in the Philippines. It was kind of like it's kind of like shied away from. It was like very taboo to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're bipolar or like depressed, oh no, you're just going through a bad day. You'll get over it.
Yeah.
Why can't you just smile?
What?
Yeah,
bad days
that's my
last
favorite
months
thing.
now.
Why can't you just smile and be happy?
Yeah.
Why didn't
Just
I
get
think
over
of
it.
that?
Just get over it.
Yeah.
I'm
fine now, thanks.
Right. So number 8 is parenting, which doesn't apply to you.
Babies.
We do have fur babies.
Yeah, when he we just got Morticia and he started having his episodes, like a psychotic episode. He our cat would see me kind of restrain him and try to like protect himself.
And then she started trying to help.
Yeah, she would try to like attack my leg and stuff, like she thought I was hurting him. And like pretty much we had like 2 dogs, and like occasionally, like before like we found the right combination of medications for him, like when he was going through like an episode, they would be kind of like like hovering around making sure like we're okay, and like
the animals don't dig it.
Yeah, they don't, but they're like they're there if you need to like pet therapy levels.
Yeah, but I don't think people give animals enough credit for being able to pick up on that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Because everybody always jokes around about like, oh, I have an emotional support pig, or like things like that.
Pigs are smart. Pigs are fucking smart, man.
So animals are very intuitive. And like I can speak on the parenting part. As far as children go, like they definitely pick up on it. And speaking for myself, it makes you feel like a terrible parent, because they're seeing you go through that, and it's like, oh, I'm fucking them up because this is the version of a mother that they see, and I'm sure other people can relate to that. You want to be the best parent you can be, but if you're too depressed to get out of bed, there's no going to the park, there's no playing, there's like, can you please just give me space, and they're young and they don't understand, and they want to be kids, and like you get very overstimulated because again they're children and they're loud and they're running around and they're being kids, but
and that can be too much for
you can't handle it. So you end up like kind of pushing them away and saying like, oh, I can't play with you right now. I can't do this. I can't do that, so that is very difficult. So I understand why that's on the list.
Oh my God, that's so heartbreaking. I'm so sorry.
I've dealt with the same thing. My son, of course, all my kids, they seen, experienced things I wish they didn't. This is way before I had any idea what was really going on. I knew something was going on, but then I was drinking a lot. So, they seen a lot of things. They heard me scream, whatever. But now I start to see, certain little attributes in my son's character that remind me of myself in bad situations. And I've talked to him about it, like, look, borderline, certain things can be passed down to children just by the way you act. They pick up those things. And it can be tough. So I can relate to, man, I feel like a shitty father. I wish I could just go back in time and knowing what I know now and try and fix everything. But I got a 3-year-old grandson, so I kind of make it up with him.
So number 9 is increased number of arguments.
No.
In the beginning, actually.
Yeah, I actually feel pretty normal, I think.
Yeah.
Like when you're first getting to know each other, that's when couples have the most arguments.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, like, some of the worst arguments I've had was in this relationship.
Because I can't speak for you. Is it because you cared about the relationship more than the other ones? Because she was more accepting of your illnesses?
I think it actually has a lot to do with the fact that she's just been around longer. So, like, the bigger stuff has come up.
Yeah.
Because, like, if I'm not in a good headspace and, like, I put her in a bad position, like, that's going to cause a massive argument. Like, you're just incapable of being irrational person at that point. Rational.
That's great, man.
And number 10, we've already touched on, is loss of intimacy. So, medicate. I think. Oh, believe me, I'm on Zoloft too, and I'm on 450. So it's the highest dose you can go.
Wow.
So I get it. So it's hard in any aspect of a relationship dealing with mental illness from both sides. The one who has the illness, you feel like the burden. And the one that doesn't, you feel resentment towards it. And it's great that you're open and accepting of it. I'm sure there's plenty of people who just bury it deep inside, and eventually it just gets to the point where they're like, I can't be with you anymore. Like, it's just too much. So it's great that you are able to communicate that.
Yeah. I think one of the helpful things that I've actually, like, told a bunch of my friends who have, like, significant others or spouses that have mental illness, it just remember why you two got together in the first place. He's not a malicious guy. If you lasted like 6 months, even like maybe like for as long as we have, like 13 years, it's definitely, he's not out to get you. He's not being malicious. It's that his mental illness.
As long as he puts in the work.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And I'm glad that you said that, because, coming up, on the end of the, show, I wanted you guys, because as Lydia mentioned, you guys have been together for 13 years. We've talked about some things that's worked, understanding on your part, Maria, Reed, you putting in, the work, and the communication, and between the two. So I think we've touched on a lot of things that if you are in a relationship, whether it be friendship, whether it be a family member or a couple, these can be worked out. Once I started using the current medication I'm on, put the bottle down, family relationships got tighter. Marriage got better. We're not arguing as much, and I attribute a lot of that to probably the alcohol. But so things can get better. I understand some people don't have really the I guess the strength to deal with somebody. They want it all just perfect. We're not perfect people. You're gonna have a hard time picking somebody.
Even people that don't suffer are not perfect.
Yeah,
exactly right. And it's just it's tough all around. It'll be I might get in trouble, but no, it'll be 24 years
wow.
married.
Mrs. Otis is going to be like, ah.
I know. I'm waiting to feel the eyes behind my head, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And about 26 years together, and it didn't take me long to show her what I always called myself a monster. She'd be like, "No, you're not. No, you're not. Oh, yes, I am." And she saw it on a few occasions, but we're still together. It just takes some, dedication, some, and you have to set boundaries. That was a big thing, with me. No, you're not doing this, or no, I don't appreciate you talking to me, that way. If you communicate instead of reacting, there's just if you're married, marriage counseling could probably, help in that aspect. And even going to support groups for, NAMI has tons of, support groups in different areas. If you're struggling trying to do it on your own, there are ways to have lasting marriages, relationships, friends, whatever, when you or the other person is dealing with a mental disorder. It can be done. It's not all doom and gloom. You're going to have a lot rougher patches possibly than anybody else due to that, but it is possible.
Yeah. Well.
Before we end, I do have like one last. Now, when you first got together, did you have the medical background to know about these things?
I did.
So did you have any concerns about getting into a relationship that you knew was with someone dealing with these things?
You didn't really believe me.
Well, it's like, you're on a date and you're just like, oh, I'm crazy. Like, people just say this like, oh, I'm Looney Tunes, or just kind of like, like a ha-ha. You don't really think it's like a clinical diagnosis on a first date. But at first I was a little bit like, a bit at first, but I remember my dad, it was kind of like one of those like bring your kids to work kind of thing. So it was a neurology appointment, and a patient was having an episode right then and there. And like I seen him from like, perfect, very like well-mannered to just completely like out of their gourd. And it was like, oh wow. Like my dad reminded me after the episode and got him leveled. He was like, this by no means makes him a bad person. It's just, he was just having like an episode. So it's like, oh, okay, so he's not a bad person. He was like, no, they're not a bad person.
Because I think, like doing my research and my notes that I, me and Otis always joke about, a lot of it, people say that they're kind of wary of getting into a relationship with someone that they know has a mental illness. And I think that just goes back to the stigma, and how all these mental illnesses are portrayed. So That's why I was just curious about that.
Yeah, he was he was very, very, very honest and always been like considerate and like respectful, and like even on his first real psychotic episode, I was like, oh my god, I don't know if I can do this, but
but you did.
I did. It's not so much like not having the choice, but let me see, my god, my 40s. I've been in the medical field for about like almost like 27 years. So I've had that long withstanding being in like helping out patients and like having that empathy for them. And it's like it just didn't feel right that like if someone was going to take accountability for their actions, I couldn't just be as like, oh, I can't handle this. It's not always, about you. It's not always about me. It's about us. That's what we can do as a couple.
I think that's great, awesome. And I hope that anybody who is watching sees that, it works out.
Yeah.
As long as you're willing to put in the work.
You gotta put in the work.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's day in, day out, sometimes minute by minute. It's work, and it's hard, but the rewards that you reap from putting in the work is absolutely amazing. It hasn't been an easy road in my first year of sobriety, but I'm still sober and I'm still putting in the work, and things are, better now. So
congratulations by the way for your sobriety.
Thank you. And it can be the same way with the relationship. You put in the work, and if you do it genuinely, put in the work, you'll find that it's hard, but you also find that it's very much worth it. Reed, Maria, I want to say thank you so much for sharing.
Yes.
Your story with you guys being a couple, Reed, with your issues. I'm not sure still what you've been diagnosed with, because there's so many things and you have no idea. But because sometimes it helps, people like myself, to know what the hell is going on. It gives you a certain sense of validation that this is valid, what I'm feeling and what's going on in me. So
just because you can't see it doesn't mean I'm not dealing with it. And I think that's the hardest thing about mental illness is that
depression hides behind a smile.
The invisible disease.
Yeah, it is. And there's actually, I want to add on there. Depending on your insurance company, and there's some psych providers that don't necessarily want to believe it, but there is genetic testing that checks out like what
medications will work for you.
Genetic testing for medications. It's getting the friggin' insurance company to pay for it's impossible, but it really works for a lot of people. So you don't have to be a lab rat to figure out what medication.
Do the prices right? Like
I always say I feel like a dartboard. Yeah, and they're just throwing whatever they think is going to stick,
and you have no idea where the bullseye is.
Yep. I mean, because I had, I had gotten hurt at work. I have a head injury, a traumatic brain injury from it, which has, obviously intensified everything. And my neurologist, thankfully I don't see that one anymore, she was I have constant headaches from that incident. She was putting everything on the mental illness. She was like, oh, well, because you have, the anxiety and the depression, everything that's causing you to just keep having the headaches. And it's like, no,
I don't think it works like that.
And everybody just wants to put everything on mental illness to and it's not fair.
You're getting gaslighted by your own doctor,
right?
Man, right?
It happens more than like nothing else. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So before we end, Reed, you are an author, a movie reviewer. If you want to tell people where they can find your work, anything like that,
sure.
Now's your time to shine.
So you can find me pretty much anywhere at Reed's Horror. That's just nice and simple, all one word, at Reed's Horror. I'm on like YouTube and Threads and now Blue Sky. I'm everywhere. So you can probably just TikTok. I'm on TikTok. You can probably just Google at Reed's Horror and you'll get me.
And the website.
And the website is also reedshorror.com, so that could come up as well. And then finally, my current books out are UPD, Texas Case Files 1 through 3, and Hungry Cosmos. And I am soon to have a new book out. It's going to be published sometime in November. Working title is A Diabolic Mind.
Awesome.
And see, and then there's more messages of hope right there. You can suffer from these things. You get put on the right track. You can achieve great things, man. Congratulations, Reed.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, both of you, so much for coming on and being willing to tell your story and being open. As we end this episode, you don't have to sign out. We'll throw you back in the green room for a minute.
Yeah, hang on. We'll say bye
as
after
we do our outro. So we will see you in a minute or two. Thank you again for being on.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Cheers.
All right. Awesome.
So that concludes another episode of Dred the Stigma.
And Stigma.
I'm telling you, some days
Stigma
I can't think
cum
straight.
laude or some shit like that.
Right?
I think next week we're going to be diving into some numbers and some statistics to show you that mental illness is almost of epidemic proportions, and I'm pretty sure the numbers are going to relate such things. It's probably a lot worse than what maybe people realize. You mentioned 1 in 5. If you don't know, for 3-4 other people that have it, it's probably you. So that will be 2 weeks from now because we are bi-weekly.
Yep.
So we hope that you join us then, and I hope you got something out of this. I know I certainly did. I know I'm not alone because I heard a lot of the same issues that Reed and Maria, have had in the past that I've had. So, you're not alone. Any parting words, Lydia?
I always hope that, at the end of each episode that somebody gains something from it, even if it's just one person that looks at mental illness a different way. Then I know we've done our job as far as this podcast goes. So with that, outro.